And welcome to the Alex Urbina radio show. I'm your host, joined weekly in studio with my co-host, Ellen Tunick. You're listening to a life coaching show where you get to learn all about being coached and how to find yourself to your next level of interpersonal growth. We're doing a series called Helping You Reach Your Full Potential. But before we jump into the coaching session, I want to talk to you a little bit about what it's like to be coachable. Coachable, I don't know if it's a word that I just made up or if it's a word that's actually distinguished out in the world for people that are being coached. But for me, being coachable means that you got to be open-minded. If you're going to sit down with somebody to open up possibilities for you, you really have to have an open mind as much as possible. You have to be open to all possibilities that even if you can't see that they're possible, you still got to be open to that somebody sees them possible. And just maybe if I can start to see them that they're possible to be created for myself, then someday soon I might be able to actually create them for myself. The next thing on how to be coachable is to be self-aware. You really got to be willing to take a deep, honest look at yourself. You got to be willing to look inward, not outward, because most of us are trained ourselves to look outward to try to fix the things that are outside of us. But to be self-aware, you really got to look at yourself and reflect inward, and maybe even be in the question, like, why did I say that? Where was I? What was I thinking when I responded like that? Why did I choose what I chose? Where was I choosing from? So living in the question of while being self-aware, I think, is really powerful. And then the last thing is to be coachable. You got to be willing to surrender some old limiting beliefs, some old conditioning that we were brought up in certain homes, and we created certain rules or certain narratives or ideas or concepts that might not necessarily be real, but even though they're a belief and they're part of our belief system, we make them real. And so you got to be willing to surrender some of those old limiting beliefs once you've identified them. So today is going to be a cool segment because I'm going to get to coach you and open up some possibilities for you. So
settle in.
Yeah, get in the hot seat. What are some of the things that you see yourself having breakthroughs in the next level of your life and the area that you want to grow in? Like what are the things that you're being challenged with to be able to get yourself to your next level?
We've talked about this a lot. You know, I believe that I had a wonderful childhood. Had, a loving home, loving parents, and it was just more than anybody could ask for, and I was very, very grateful. However, now that I am the age I'm at and I'm looking at my own behaviors, I realize, and through being coached and, talking with you, I now realize that a lot of my responses come from the conditioning I had as a child. And those conditioning responses that I have, I really would like to change, to move on from them, because whether they worked or not way back then, I don't think they work for me now.
I'm glad you said that, because quite often we have some old programming that helped us at the time that we needed that type of programming, right? Like maybe if you grew up in a home where your mom or dad never believed you and you had these certain responses or triggers or the way you responded to their doubts, it was a way to kind of help you cope with not being believed or trusted in your home. And so that certain mechanism that you were operating might have helped you back then as a little kid to not have to look at the pain of not being believed in your home by your parents.
Well, there was sometimes reason for that.
But you follow what I'm saying?
Yes,
like
I
that
do.
conditioning and that way about you that needed to be that way was to help you survive in that certain time.
I've always felt very secure in my home with my parents and my sister. I never felt insecure. Because obviously it was a long time ago, they were brought up in a certain way. Their culture is very different than today's culture. So the one thing I remember over and over and over again was, wait till your father comes home. That was something that I lived with all the time was wait till your father comes home. And in my household, even though my mother was college educated, she didn't work outside the home. And I knew my dad would come home at 6 o'clock every night. And boy, when it was one of those days, I can remember sitting there and just staring at the clock going, 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 minutes.
Doing the countdown.
And in comes Dad. And he was the one that I always wanted not to disappoint. I wanted him to feel my respect. And our most difficult times, honestly, were just adolescence. But there was a lot of conditioning when I was little that has come through in my life now that I really want to take a look at.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that, because that conditioning, as I was pointing out earlier, is that you might have needed to bring those things out to get through the pain or not wanting to look at or accept certain things that are happening in your family and the certain things that you needed from your parents that you weren't getting. But that doesn't mean that today, at this age of your life or stage of your life, that you still need those same conditioning. And somehow those conditionings can still sabotage open, loving, trusting relationships because you never worked on them, or you never realized that you actually have been carrying them with you from relationship to relationship.
Well, there was a lot of kids should be, what's the saying? It's like my parents, it was their rules, and if you disobeyed them, obviously there was a punishment involved. Seen and not heard. Mm-hmm. There was that seen and not heard environment, which came from them being seen and not heard as children. So one of the things that I know that has affected me as an adult is when I don't feel, if I'm saying something and I feel that somebody is not listening to me and I end up feeling invisible, it makes me really angry, and it makes me feel horrible. I don't like feeling invisible.
Got it. What question do you have specifically so that I can meet you where you are and then help open up some possibilities for you?
How do I respond to the person that is creating that feeling inside me? How do I respond to them, and what do I say?
Okay, so first off, I'm going to point out something to you about what you just said. And what you said was you were kind of painting a picture that they're causing this to you, rather than they're just doing what they're doing, and then you're interpreting.
There we go again.
Right. That you're interpreting that they're not listening to you. Correct?
But what if I know they're not?
Well, they're not, because you have evidence that what you're saying is not being heard the way that you intended it for it to land. Correct?
Correct.
Okay. So this is a perspective that you have, and there's either the victim perspective or the responsible perspective. The victim perspective implies that it's them that doesn't understand what you're saying. That is them, that they don't get what you're trying to
they don't care.
Or that is them, that they don't care about your feelings or what you're trying to share with them. Now, the responsible version, which is the more powerful version, is, wow, what's missing from me that I can't articulate this in a way that they are actually hearing what I'm saying? Now, if you come from what's missing for me that I need to either say it in a different way, maybe I need to be more vulnerable when I say it, maybe I need to tee up a process for them to hear that what I'm going to share with them is really important to me. Like there's something missing that you actually have control over, that if you actually identified what it was, brought it to the conversation, could create a totally different result.
I think the tee up.
Okay, so but before we get to the figuring out what it is, I just want to point out that the way that you asked the question was assuming that the other person it is their fault that you're not being heard.
Yes.
correct?
That's the go-to.
That's your go-to. It's your trigger going to, they don't get me. They're not hearing me. Instead of, wow, Alex, what could be missing from me that I'm not able to land what I want to them to hear me say?
So I actually end up feeling like that child.
Yes. You go back to,
I go
Mom,
back
you
to
don't
that
hear me.
child
Dad, you
where
don't give me a voice.
I didn't
can't
have a voice.
Yeah.
I made my voice,
Yeah.
and it got me in trouble.
Right.
I ended up being a kind of a tough adolescent,
Right.
because I was going to make myself heard. It didn't always land well.
So I
do feel like that child.
So I need to explain to you that you can't muscle people to hear you. Not now, not tomorrow, not ever. You can't make people hear you or allow yourself to be heard. However, you do have some very powerful tools within you that if you learn how to access them when you're speaking, people will listen to you. So, for example, if you're able to learn how to tap into being more authentic, more vulnerable. Vulnerability is the most amazing tool in the human being's tool belt. If you've ever been somewhere and somebody starts to share and their voice cracks, and all of a sudden the whole room just stops and you can hear literally a pin drop and everyone's ears looks towards that person because you hear the voice crack, and you know that voice crack means they're being vulnerable, and all of a sudden they're sharing from that vulnerability. The whole room stops and they have the attention of everybody in the room.
Why is that?
Because they're being real at that moment. They're being authentic.
And people listening, it's almost like it's just a physical response you get when you feel that somebody is being vulnerable.
I think it's a spiritual response.
Okay.
When we're being vulnerable, when we're finally allowing ourselves to speak my truth, speak to my pain, allow myself to feel what I'm feeling in this moment, like being freed up to feel what I'm feeling in the moment and then communicating from that place. It always hooks the other person's heart, and then once it hooks their heart, it hooks their ears.
So what just happened to me when you said speak your pain, that I actually get tears?
Yeah.
What is that?
Because I think you've created a mechanism where you don't allow people to see you hurt or see you in the pain. And it's been a long time since you've spoken from the pain. So I'm going to give you an example.
Anybody got any Kleenex around
Yeah,
here?
tissues right here with our producer.
One must always be prepared.
So I have a client that he's really spent his whole lifetime masking his pain. So when he communicates to his loved ones, he puts on a smile and he pretends with a chuckle. That's his coping mechanism. So when he's really hurt or he's really feeling sad or he's feeling the pain, he chuckles and he laughs and he does the whole neck thing like nothing's bothering him. So he puts on this facade, but yet he's asking his loved ones to listen to him. But none of his loved ones give them the ear and the attention that he's looking for so that he could be heard. And once I've pointed out to him that he has this mechanism of him, I'm like, what's the chuckle for? Why are you doing the head? Why is that whole bravado and the I don't care?
The cover up.
It's a mask. It's a shield to protect himself. And I said, if you stop that game and just allow yourself to let them see you in the pain and finally be vulnerable for once and be authentic with what you're feeling and then communicate from that feeling, you'll have the attention of everyone in the room. And it wasn't until he was willing to try it one time, just trust, that all of a sudden he was able to allow himself to speak from the pain, be vulnerable, and let them see him hurt. Was when everyone goes, you know what, Timmy or Michael or whatever his name is, I'm not going to give him his name, but they said, wow, I hear you now. I get you now. And then they go, where has this guy been your whole life? We want this guy. This guy I can have a relationship with. This guy, I understand what you're saying. But when you act all, everything's okay and you chuckle and you laugh and you hide behind this mask, you're not going to hook my heart. You're not going to hook my ears because you're not giving me the real authentic you in that moment.
And also, and I obviously have done that in my life.
So I need you to respond to what are you hearing me say? Because there's other people that are listening going, I think I do that. What are you hearing me say when I paint that picture for you?
What I'm hearing you say is that I'm leading that situation and that conversation, and I don't exactly know what my fear is, but there's either a fear of rejection or a fear of criticism, judgment, and so I don't even know how to be that vulnerable, but I would like to be that vulnerable and honestly not even care if they respond in some way that I'm thinking they should, because there is no should.
Right.
I would just like to get to that level where if that's what I'm feeling and that's what I'm sharing, that's it.
And if you can get yourself to the place called courageous enough to communicate from that pain authentically, raw, real, tissues, no tissues, snots coming out of your nose, whatever, like hair messed up, just like, this is it, this is where I'm feeling, and communicate from that place, you will have a profound experience from everyone else in the room.
And I can intellectualize all of that, and I would like to now take it from intellectualizing it to experiencing it. I want to get from there to there.
Okay, so now you know the concept, and now you know the instructions, and now we've talked about it and painted that picture. So now you have to take it and actually practice it in your home with the people you love the most. And I'm almost 99% sure that your husband's going, yes, show me that lady.
Well, if he's listening
I want
right
that
now,
I want that woman.
He is all for it. He is all for it.
Yeah, we all are. We want.
And why wouldn't we be?
We want our loved ones to communicate without the facade. We want people to be real. It's like, just show me. If you're in pain, show me you're in pain. Communicate from the pain. And then I can now shift in being compassionate and listen from a compassionate space rather than defending myself. Because a lot of times when people are communicating, you're bringing your ego and your facade, and then it triggers mine, and then my defense mechanism comes in, and before you know it, we're now fighting. When it's like, how do we start?
How did we get there?
How do we get here when I was communicating that I'm upset or angry or annoyed or whatever it was?
So how do you get from, and this is, again, I've been thinking a lot about this. How do you get from, I can be vulnerable, I can cry, I can be sad, I can expose all those feelings, and it's not going to have an impact, a negative impact on taking care of things, which is also my deal, is constantly making sure everything is taken care of.
So let me see if I'm hearing this right.
Okay.
It sounds like you're saying, Alex, I'm afraid that if I become vulnerable, that I'll fall apart. And I won't
or that things around me will fall apart.
All right, good. All right. It's not your job to hold everything together.
I know. We're gonna have to talk about this a lot.
It's not your job.
Father.
It's not your job to hold everything together.
But my father did, and that's what I learned. My father held I mean, I had him on a pedestal most of my life.
Okay.
Loved my mother like crazy, but my dad was on the pedestal, and I learned so much about kindness, hard work, ethics, morals, and making sure you take care of your family.
Okay, so if you want to play the game called, I'm going to try to be strong and tough for the family so I can hold everything together, you can play that game the rest of your life. However, there's going to...
want to.
Well, whether you want to or not, let's say you decide to go down that road. You're going to pay prices, and then your family are going to pay prices too. Some of the prices are, I never had a safe space to flush things out. My mom never was vulnerable enough to send a message to me that it's okay for me to communicate my feelings. I never felt like I could share authentically because my mom never cried. She always was holding things together. I'm painting this picture that you're going to pay a price and your kids are going to pay a price because you want to so-called hold everything together instead of surrendering the needing to hold the family together and trusting that I just get to be the space for everybody to communicate authentically and freely. creating a space for your family and yourself to communicate authentically and freely allows those people to develop healthy and an emotional healthy context. I would think that you would want your grandson and your sons and your daughters and your family to be emotionally healthy, where they can express their feelings and let things go and get off of stuff so they can be freed up to move on with their life, instead of carrying around a lot of emotional baggage with them that just keeps sabotaging any new attempt at creating something extraordinary. Correct?
Is it possible that I create that space for them, but I don't have that space for me?
Yes. However, the space might not be fully for them to fully express themselves. So you might have created, like, let's say, in a space that holds a capacity of 100%, you might have created a 70% space. So there's certain things that they might not, they know my mom is unconditional love and I can share whatever I want as long as it's within the 70% realm. But there's 30% that I can't share with my mom because I know that
would be a fascinating question to ask.
It would. We got to take a break. So hopefully when we come back from the break, we'll take the coaching session to a whole new level. Stay tuned for more of the Alex Urbina radio show right here in your hometown station, KHTS.
Stone Oven, the healthy alternative. You've never tasted a sandwich like this before. Gourmet bread cooked before your eyes. Stone Oven at the food court at Valencia Town Center.
Save at the best Santa Clarita restaurants. Restaurant Row, where everything is half price. Click on hometownstation.com and discover incredible savings. Online or at our radio station, everyone saves with Restaurant Row. Check it out at hometownstation.com. Restaurant Row, where everything is half price.
The Santa Clarita Artists Association has a new gallery in downtown Newhall on 6th Street between Main and Railroad, right across from the Canyon Theater Guild. The gallery features our members' paintings, sculptures, and one-of-a-kind handcrafted gift items. Whether you're an art lover, buyer, or an artist wishing to join, visit our website at santaclaritaartist.org, come to our free monthly meetings at Barnes & Noble, or stop by the gallery. For upcoming events and exhibits, check us out at santaclaritaartist.org. We make visual art visible.
Hometown station.
KHTS AM 1220 and the new 98.1 FM.
And welcome back to the Alex Urbina radio show. I'm your host, Alex Urbina. I'm an advanced life coach specialist hanging out with my co-host, Mrs. Ellen Tunick. You ready to take it up a notch?
Absolutely.
Are you physically exhausted, emotionally exhausted, spiritually exhausted, mentally exhausted?
You know, I guess the work that needs to be done to put myself in the place that I am looking to go. I'm overwhelmed sometimes with how much work it takes to really commit and get to that level. It's not easy. It's not easy. Not that I'm not willing to do it, but it goes around and round in my head about, wow, you know, it's every time we talk about something, there's 400 more things when I go home that go, okay, well, that impacts that, and that, you know, everything gets so convoluted.
What's funny is that as you're explaining that, I'm thinking to myself, when I was a kid, I remember hanging out at my uncle's house out in Tucson, Arizona. He had an auto parts store, and he would let me come over in the summertime and work for him. And his goal was to teach me about all the different parts on a car, and he'd give me homework and I'd have to study. I remember being so overwhelmed, like, there are millions of parts to this car. Like, how am I going to remember, like, all of this? It's so overwhelming. And then he said to me, he goes, do you know how to eat an elephant? And I said, no. He said, one bite at a time. He goes, learn one part at a time. Stop being overwhelmed with trying to learn all of them, and just one a day. And you might find out that you have the capacity to actually learn 2 a day.
Yeah.
And then 5 a day. So you got to give yourself a break and go, I'm just going to learn today. What's the lesson today? If you can just learn what your takeaway today is, and then every day learn something brand new before you realize it.
What is my lesson today?
What's your lesson today? what's your question today is what I want to ask. What's the next question you have? Because I think we teased everybody with how do I move on by releasing things and moving on to the direction that I want to head towards.
This is kind of part of that initial question, but now it goes to what happens in our life that leads us to be so self-critical and judgmental. I think that this crosses all barriers of people, young, old, middle-aged. I think a majority of us spend a lot of time in judgment, maybe of others. I certainly work really hard at not judging others, but I don't work really hard at not judging myself.
Okay, so the question is how did we get to this point?
How does that come to be? And then how do I work with that to begin to move forward and release that?
I think that, and I want to believe that when we were born knowing ourselves as purely magnificent. Like when you're 3 days old, when you're 30 days old, you just know yourself to be an extraordinary being with the potential to create whatever you want. And it's not until you slowly start to create these beliefs about yourself and the world and your family and what's possible and what's not possible that we start to doubt ourselves and the world and possibilities. So for one is we start creating these limiting beliefs about the things that are outside of us as well as the things that are inside of us. So let's start with the self-limiting belief. We have a self-limiting belief that I'm not smart enough, not pretty enough, I'm not good enough. And then we go through the rest of our lives validating that those limiting beliefs are true. And one of the greatest examples and scenarios that I share, it's about this little kid that is so excited to share his gold star with his dad. And he runs home and he's looking for his dad, and his dad's somewhere in the house, and he's running from room to room going, Dad, where are you at? Because this little kid wants to get validation from his dad one more time that, yes, I'm proud of you, and yes, you are amazing. High five, right? We're looking for validation when we're kids. And this little kid runs around and finally finds Dad in his home office and kicks the door open, and he goes, Dad, look what I got. And his dad goes, not right now, Johnny. Now, in that moment, Johnny didn't hear not right now. Johnny heard what?
It's not important.
I'm not important.
Yeah.
My dad doesn't care, right? So this is the ego now creating these self-limiting beliefs about me or about Johnny, but that's not what's really happening. But it doesn't matter because Johnny now believes that he's not important and he doesn't matter and that his dad doesn't care. Now, Johnny will go the rest of his life trying to prove that he doesn't matter and that his dad doesn't care and that he's not important. That's how it works. It's through the conscious awareness through us in a certain lifetime that we go, wait a minute, I have limiting beliefs, and then being willing to look at what those limiting beliefs are and start identifying what they are so that we can transcend those into positive beliefs that, yes, I am important. Yes, I do matter. Yes, I do have a voice. I do have a purpose. And so we have to start now course correcting that on this conscious journey, getting ourselves to a higher stage of enlightenment.
How do we get to, where do we go to find out what those limiting beliefs are? I mean, I have many of them, I think. Oh, you go get coached. Hello.
Yeah, you got to sit with somebody that can help you through the process to look at those and explore them. Someone you trust, someone that you know has your back and wants you to win and is going to kind of guide you down that road with some compassion, but also rigorous enough to challenge you because your ego is going to want to come out and defend and weasel out of it and all that kind of stuff. So it's a dance. But it's a coaching process. So you go to an expert or a professional that can help you identify what those are so you can be aware of them and then slowly start to release them and then replace them with more empowering beliefs about yourself.
Okay, so what I would really like to work on when it comes to that is obviously identifying the limiting beliefs that I have. I want to get to understand that I can be soft and vulnerable and kind and caring and still maintain what I need to maintain for my home and my family. That's kind of the crux of where I would like to go.
Okay, I love that. And then you would have to make a new assumption or a new belief that vulnerability is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. So when you really dive into this world called vulnerability and learn about it and discover vulnerability, you're going to start to realize, not because I am telling you, but you'll discover on your own that vulnerability is powerful. And that it actually, when you're able to finally trust yourself to be vulnerable, you become stronger and you become more powerful, and you realize that vulnerability is powerful. And that you don't fall apart, and it's not a sign of weakness, and it doesn't let people know.
One thing doesn't have anything to do with the other.
Yeah. It's a mirage that we've created, that if I allow myself to be vulnerable, people will take advantage of me. If I bring my wall down, people will make a statement to people that they can walk all over me. It's not true. It's an illusion. And it's until you finally have the courage to be vulnerable for once in your life in a profound way, you go, oh my God, that felt amazing. You felt more empowered when you have those kinds of experiences.
That's going to be my little aha also. I mean, I have been journaling at night, like I said, and I find that there is a trend. And that trend is constantly about not being vulnerable. So I have created a scenario in my own life that somehow along the way it told me, no, don't go down that road.
Let me ask you a question. How would you like to be 10 times more powerful than you already are?
That's like scares the out of me.
Regardless of the feeling, how would you like to get to that?
Feel the fear and do it anyway?
Yeah. How would you like to get to that stage?
I'd love it.
It's all locked in your vulnerability.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you embark on a journey for the next 3 years or 5 years or 10 years, whatever it is, of practicing how to be vulnerable and surrendering the fear when it comes up and the ego that wants to protect you, and you surrender all that and just allow yourself to be vulnerable when it's time to be vulnerable, you're going to have these powerful breakthroughs, and your confidence skyrockets to a whole nother level. But no one teaches us this. No one paints this picture. No one comes back to go, oh, by the way, you little kid, if you practice this.
It's the opposite. We are taught and we learn the exact opposite.
Yeah, and I don't know if we're directly being taught that, or we're just deciding it based on allowing our ego to convince us not to go there. You got to remember, ego's been driving you for such a long time. Its job is to protect you.
Right.
Its job is to protect you from being hurt or let down or rejected. And so what it does is it puts up these defense mechanisms. It does not want you to ever be vulnerable, because its fear is, if I become vulnerable, then someone's going to laugh at me. If I become vulnerable, someone's going to take advantage of me. They're going to use that against me. And so we operate in this world with so much fear that we don't realize how unconscious we are in our fear and how it gets in the way of our full potential.
We do operate in a haze of fear.
Yeah, except we just don't ever get guided to go down the journey and take a look at all that stuff.
Yeah.
Like who's going to point?
See it in a different way.
Who's going to point that out for us? Who's actually going to go? Wait a minute. Yeah, but I mean, besides a coach, who's going to go? Hey, your fear, like your husband's not going to go, honey, that fear is sabotaging you in all these other relationships. And even if he did do that, you already have him in a box. So, and he probably is. He's probably tried to say this to you so many different ways, as much as you've tried to point things out to him. But in our relationships, we put each other in boxes. Like,
yeah, we
do.
do.
Yeah, like you can't tell me that, but someone else that I trust.
Yeah.
My next door neighbor can say the same exact thing, and I'm going, "Did you hear what Jim just said? I mean, isn't that awesome?"
I can remember saying it says, "I can say anything I want about my kids, but don't you dare."
That's right. Yeah.
It's that same scenario. I just know that Ron would be so open to me being more open.
And vulnerable.
And vulnerable.
So this is what. So here's the.
That's why we're going to your workshop.
Awesome. I'm so excited for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you some homework.
Okay.
The homework for you is just to create multiple opportunities to sit down with Ron and ask him to support you in this process of practicing vulnerability. And then I want you to write down some bullet points of a request that you need from him. So what would it sound like is, hey, Ron, I'm going to practice this vulnerability. And then I believe that by me accessing this vulnerability, it's going to help our relationship go to another level, to help communication to a whole nother level. But these are the things that I'm going to need from you. And then it's okay to ask him, request of him. I'm going to need, when I go to those places, I'm going to need for you to be compassionate. I'm going to need you in that moment to not give me advice. What I'm going to need from that moment is to not try to point things out. Like go down the line and set yourself up to win. What we don't realize is that we don't sit down with our partners and ask them or request of them the things that we need to kind of help us get down the road and grow a little bit more.
Why is that? That just doesn't, I mean, it makes so much sense hearing it, but it doesn't happen in so many relationships. We do at the very beginning, and if we don't get it back, we just go, oh, well, whatever. So I will absolutely sit down, and fortunately, I have a husband that's very kind and very heartfelt and is really my greatest supporter in life. And I think sometimes you just have to ask for what you need. And people give up, I think.
Now, for someone that has to stand up and ask for what they need, what ways of being do they have to come from? What ways of being do they have to access in order to ask for someone to give them something that they need? Would you have to be worthy?
Yes.
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 Would you have to love yourself?
Yes.
Would you have to
You can't
believe
be in a
in
subservient situation.
That's right.
Asking what you need is okay. It comes from your heart. It comes from this wonderful person that you are. It's not a negative.
So when you're wondering, like, why can't I ask for what I need?
Yeah.
Then you got to go back to, am I being worthy enough to ask for help? Am I worthy enough to ask for support? You got to go back to the worthiness conversation. A lot of us have this unworthiness conversation because of some of the homes that we grew up in with parents that not consciously but unconsciously contributed to us creating these unworthiness beliefs about ourselves.
That's interesting because I was definitely loved unconditionally. There's no question about that with what I put my parents through, and they didn't say bye-bye.
Yeah.
But the worthiness, I always heard, the message always was, you think of others before you think of yourself. Don't be selfish. And that's one of my limiting beliefs. That you do it for the other person first. Otherwise, you're creating a selfish motive.
So now I know why you struggle and pay prices in your life.
Yes.
Because of
Did
that.
I just tell you?
Yeah, because of that belief.
Yeah.
There's everyone else has to win first besides
Yes.
me.
Yes.
Or I'm last.
I think that's why when we had Carlos last week, I was so heartfelt towards him because
Oh, did you notice? Did you recognize something similar in
I
him?
did. I did.
Yeah.
And that he was struggling with the same thing that I struggle with.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I was pulled towards him and felt for him and basically said, hey, you are young. You don't need to spend the next 40 years feeling like that.
So how would you love to have Carlos have a huge awakening and realizing his own self-worth?
How would I like that? I
Yeah.
mean,
How would you love to be that pivotal
I
person for him
would
to
love.
Okay, this is how you do that. You
How
ready?
do I do that?
You have to discover your own self-worth
Yes.
and shine your light so that other people can see your light and go, hey,
That looks good.
yeah. And they go, don't I got one of those myself?
Yeah.
So the way that
And
you
I can
help
look
other
and say, yes, you do.
Yeah, absolutely. But you don't even have to say that. Just by shining your own self-worth light and being that self-worth everywhere you go, people see that and go, I wonder if don't I also have that as well? And then now starts them on their journey
Their
to
own
go
journey.
start to find their own light.
Yeah. I think that is the real crux for me, is finding my own self-worth. I mean, I talk a good game, but I don't feel it.
So what's next for you then? What are you getting clarity on today in this discussion?
What I got clarity on was, in order to get to the next level of being, that it's time for me to identify my limiting beliefs, what I've brought with me in the game to create the limiting beliefs that don't allow me the fortune of moving forward and, opening myself up. So in order to create that, number one, really understanding and practicing being vulnerable, which will lead to practicing and being aware of self-worth, that I really am. See, it's going to make me cry. I really am a great person.
Absolutely.
I don't know why I don't believe it. People tell me all the time,
but
it's like...
But you feel it.
I do.
That's why the emotion's coming out, because you feel it.
Where's that tissue?
And you know it intuitively that you are.
But... Okay, and we've talked about this a million times.
And the laughing? What was the laughing about?
I was covering up the fact that, no, that's not being conceited.
Yeah.
No,
it's a coping mechanism.
It's a coping mechanism, yeah.
Instead of just allowing yourself to fully feel how loving you are and how generous and how caring and compassionate that you really are. Because if you allowed yourself to fully feel that, we'd probably have to go on a break, because you'd break down and probably curl up into a little ball in the corner in a fetal position and just cry your heart out.
Which is okay.
Absolutely okay. Yeah, and I think we got to get you there, because
I need to be there.
Yeah, the more you start to tune into your feelings and emotions and allow yourself to be vulnerable. See, the laugh was a mechanism from your ego that didn't want you to be vulnerable. And then even talking about the tissue and all, those are all games to just allow yourself to just be vulnerable. Making a joke. So we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we'll wrap up the show.
Can I tell my little story?
Absolutely. Okay. We'll be right back.
Santa Clarita, bedbugs are taking over our city. They've invaded our homes, our businesses, and most importantly, our sleep. If you have suspicious bites that appear nightly, or have a bug that you need ID'd, your best option is to make one call to All Pro. We offer a 100% guarantee that your bedbug issues will be solved with heat in one treatment. No need to tent or spray your house with chemicals. Heat is all you need. Call 661-298-2200 or text me a bug picture to 661-645-0540. It's time to sleep tight again, SCV.
Hey, this is Ellen Kay, and did you know Exer More Than Urgent Care is open daily in Stevenson Ranch? Exer is the ER alternative that's built and staffed by ER doctors. With on-site lab, x-ray, and pharmacy, Exer has more medical services than a typical clinic. Walk in and be seen in minutes. Open 7 days a week from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. For more information, just go to exerurgentcare.com. That's EXER urgentcare.com.
Don and Gino here. So we know you want to have fun learning about real estate and finance. You're going to want to tune in this Saturday, 9 a.m. to the Don and Gino Real Estate and Finance Show right here on your hometown station. Hot topics, as always, guiding you to personal and financial wellness. And that's right, you don't want to miss it. So again, this Saturday, 9 a.m., and then we replay it online Sunday, 9 a.m., Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7 p.m. right here on the Don and Gino Real Estate and Finance Show. Join us.
You already know Salt Creek Grill has the best food in our valley. Well, now you can have Salt Creek's gourmet meals catered to your event.
I'm Greg Amsler, owner of Salt Creek Grill. I'd like to introduce you to a new level of catering, featuring our catering director, Tamara Levine.
Salt Creek Grill creates memorable experiences, which leaves our clients and guests with a sense of awe and excitement. From menu development to picturesque presentation, you'll enjoy culinary excellence and creative catering.
Salt Creek Grill, a new level of catering.
KHTS.
Now FM, 98.1 FM and AM 1220, your hometown station.
And welcome back to the Alex Urbina radio show. We're about to go over some of the aha moments, realizations, breakthroughs from the show, and some stories.
Yeah.
Got a story to share with us?
I do have a story to share. Through the months and years that I've had the opportunity to go to your workshops and, listen to your coaching, one of the things that always stood out in my mind was for our young people is we have to help them find their voice and their own magnificence. And we're not able to do that by constantly telling them what to do. So because I didn't know that concept bringing my girls up, but I'm trying to apply that concept with my grandchildren. So I watched my granddaughter the other day for like 2 days. The parents were, on a small trip. And she's 15-and-a-half-year-old adolescent female. That kind of says it all. She's wonderful and heartfelt, but not that easy. So she texted me while I was at work, and she said, "Hey, Mama, is it okay if I go to the Ventura Fair with Reese and Anthony and a couple of other people?" So I thought, yeah, that's okay, honey, but are you coming home first? Yeah, I'll be home in a few. So as I'm driving home, I'm thinking to myself, ooh, I just did the wrong thing. I'm actually don't want her to go to the fair. I don't know the people that are driving. She's on my watch. What time is she getting home? So she came home and they're trying to make these plans. And I said to her, "Hey, honey," I said, "I'm not saying that you can't go because I told you that you could." I said, "But I want to share with you that I'm really uncomfortable with having you go." And she looked at me and she said, "Why?" Like they do. And I said, first of all, I don't know the family you're going with. I don't know who is driving. I don't know if there's going to be, drinking. I don't know what time you're going to get home. 126 is a very dangerous highway at night. I said, and it just hurts my heart and it makes me very uncomfortable because you know me, I won't go to sleep until you come home, And I said, so I just thought I would share that with you. And I just left it at that. And so she's texting with her girlfriend, and all of a sudden I hear, hey, maybe we won't go. Maybe we can go this weekend. What do you think? And I had told her, I said, if you decide not to go for whatever reason, be happy to take you and your, girlfriend out to, to dinner. We'll go to a movie. So she said, I think maybe we'll go this weekend, Can we still go out and, go to dinner and go to the movies? I said, well, of course, honey. So she came to the decision, and she actually said to me, I think you're right. And, see, here I go. Okay, I'll be vulnerable. I was so proud of her, but I was proud of me.
Absolutely.
I got real proud and said, wow, I believe I did the right thing in creating my vulnerability to her and how I felt about it. And she came back with the right decision. And I told her, I said, thank you, honey. I said, thank you for making that decision. And that's my story.
It's a great story.
Isn't it?
I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
It goes to show that you're thinking outside the box. You're not trying to use the ability of controlling, and yet you're learning some new concepts, right? So in my book, The Inspirational Parent, I talk about the controlling style parent. That's our default parenting model, that when we're unconscious, you got this little baby and you think it's like, all right, it's my job to control this little kid to make sure that they're safe. And so you tell them when to turn, what to do, what not to do. But we don't realize at a certain age, in order to get them to be competent, powerful human beings on their own, to think for themselves, we have to shift from the controlling style parent into the more of an inspirational parent, where we inspire them, empower them to think for themselves. So you shifted into more of, well, you caught yourself from making a decision affirming her decision and then realizing in hindsight, how do I course correct this?
Yes.
So instead of coming in and controlling it and muscling it and
saying,
and
hey,
pulling
I'm
rank,
watching you, you're not going.
Yeah, because you could have pulled rank, but then you would have got the, hey, you said, and all that. So you were clever enough to be vulnerable and honest and share your concerns, which then allowed her, it landed and hit her heart, right?
Yeah.
And so then she goes, wow, I don't want my grandma to be worried about me. And so then now it got the wheel spinning in her. And then also I love that you threw out the negotiation. You gave her another option. So it was a negotiation tool you threw in there. I don't know if you realized you did that.
I didn't realize that, but yeah.
So, and we could talk about that at another show, but coming up with other negotiations sometimes helps other people get clarity on making maybe a better decision that's going to be more effective for them.
Yeah.
So not only did you share your concern, but then you gave her another out. You gave her another option. And then with those two options and your concern, cause her to call her friends and then start to discuss it a little further, right?
But
more
I never
mindful.
Said to her, no.
Yes. I love that. That was amazing. So kudos to you.
Thank you.
And I love these stories because these are the kinds of stories that
they're real.
And not only they're real, but they affirm that, hey, I do have what it takes to stop, rethink, and then course correct. So had you, let's say if you didn't know where to go with it, I'm so glad you did, but if you didn't, you could have called someone, right? You could have called me. I would have gave you 3 or 4 different options of how to handle it. You would have went in there and course corrected it, navigated it such that you caused a win-win for both you and her.
Yes.
And the kids.
And we had an amazing night.
I love that. Isn't that cool?
We had a great night.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody was happy.
So now, before we wrap up, what's the final takeaway? What did you realize about yourself from that story and from that scenario? This is where you get to kind of toot your own horn because it's okay to do that.
I think what I realized is I did a great job with my granddaughter. I use the tools that I'm learning through my personal coaching, and I was able to, as you say, course correct, and I feel I created a lot of value for myself in being a great grandmother to her. So, I get to chalk that one up, yeah, you did good. You did really well. And there was a tremendous amount of value created in our relationship.
Let's talk about that for a minute too. So now let's talk about what you created for the relationship. You created trust.
Yes. Trust, openness, vulnerability.
What about connection? Was there a connection made in that moment?
Yes, I'm very close to her, but when we have moments like that, that connection like notches up.
I feel like the decision she made was more of a statement to you as well.
I think so. Yes, it was a statement.
What was the statement?
The statement was, I love you, I respect you.
I don't want you to be worrying about me.
I don't want you to be worried, because she literally said, I don't want you to have to stay up.
So let's figure out how to do it in a way that we can still win and have fun and a great time.
we can still have a great time. And so proud of her.
I love it, and I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
All right, that's all the time we have. But the good news is we are live here every Friday at noon. Follow me on Facebook at Coach Alex Urbina. I'm also on Instagram or YouTube. And I got this beautiful relationship workshop coming up August 25th and 26th.
Book it.
You're not going to want to miss that one. Thanks for joining us on the Alex Urbina Radio Show right here in your hometown station, KHTS.